sending like one-way transactions, but like if you think about like digital commerce and electronic commerce, it's usually trade, right? So when we have transactions in commerce, this is a quote from Nick Szabo. He talks about, to implement a full customer vendor transaction, we need more than just the digital cash protocol. And Bitcoin is the digital cash protocol. We need a protocol that guarantees that product will be delivered if payment is made, and vice versa. So basically what you think about is basically contract obligations and counterparty risk. In this case, we have this is kind of like the typical contract example of Alice and Bob, and you've got Alice with some Bitcoins. She wants to buy this digital bear from Bob, and he wants to sell it, but there's nothing in the Bitcoin protocol necessarily that guarantees that Bob will deliver the bear. There are ways that Satoshi recommended were, like, let's say, using escrow systems, right? But those escrow systems that at least he had thought of at that time required a third party. So, when you think about like obligations that come with contracts, like that bear obligation is an economic and perhaps legal and ethical obligation, but there's also like social obligations, right? So we have like obligations to society to write good software that is helping society evolve and progress. We have ethical obligations, right, and things of that sort. And so it's possible, in my opinion, that the things that we're working on, with whether it's Mastercoin, Counterparty, Colored Coins, and all these Bitcoin 2.0 protocols, is to allow people to encode in an open way, and just like open network, different kind of obligations that we have to our business partners, our society, our government, our communities, and that sort of thing. And so I think, like, right now we're talking about like very simple kind of financial transactions, but those have they have implications for all these other kind of higher level things, right? Like, are we meeting our legal obligations to our business partners, to the communities we have, and that sort of thing. And I think, like, if you look, let's say maybe 10 years down the line, we might see a thing where the protocol is being used for, like, when we drive on a road, we're paying some kind of road coin, or whatever, something of that sort. And that's fulfilling our obligations to society to pay our fair share for the resources that we're using. And so when you think about these peer-to-peer trading protocols, what's happening is that when Alice wants to buy the bear, right, or maybe Alice wants to buy some Bitcoin from Bob, and he wants to sell that bear, the protocols, at the protocol level, it's enforcing that contract and that trade. So that essentially what's happening is that that third-party escrow thing that Satoshi talks about in his white paper, we're actually, like, this is not a proper English word, but we're protocolizing it. And so essentially we're enforcing it because everyone agrees to use this new protocol for understanding these transactions, and because we all have, whether it's Counterparty or Mastercoin, Colored Coins, we have these clients, and we can parse those transactions, and we can enforce that these two digital goods or tokens have changed hands. And one might represent a Mastercoin, and another one might represent a digital bear. So I'm just going to go through some of the use cases that we're encountering. Basically, digitized currencies for distributed applications, use rights, and then also property use rights, and then lastly, securities. So as far as like the digitized currencies, what we're seeing now is that there's probably a few groups out there that want to build things like Euro coin or USD coin, or perhaps other kind of fiat-based coins. And so one of the reasons for that is because there's this issue of KYC for the exchanges. So if you want to set up an exchange in, let's say, the Czech Republic, or here in the UK or US, you have to deal with the KYC stuff, and that is a real pain. So, if you can kind of create, if there could be like a central groups that basically deal with the KYC, that allows the exchanges to allow money to flow around, but when the money is being, the digitized currency is being exchanged back into real fiat and sent to a bank account, those providers would basically provide that mechanism and provide that KYC point. The other cool thing that that provides is that we had this problem with Mt. Gox where like the price was, I don't know, some cases 20% different from like and BTC and all the other normal exchanges out there. And the reason why that existed was because the banking system, it was very difficult to move money around between Japanese banks, and US banks, UK banks, and wherever else these exchanges were based out of. So if one of these coins had existed at that time, you could have very easily moved money around between the exchanges, and probably a lot of people would have been saving a lot of pain from that. And then the last part, which for me is the most important part, is like, right now, all these people, they're in this room, all of us, we're probably like 0.05% of the population that is into Bitcoin, and we understand how to use it and what value it brings to us and brings to the businesses and communities that we're involved in. But if you talk to the average person out there, let's say like, one of my friends is working as a clerk in a shop, or a waitress, or a bartender, or someone that owns a small business, they might not necessarily understand like, hey, what is this Bitcoin thing? I understand it's digital money, but it changes value all the time and that kind of thing. And they might not be ready to necessarily say, hey, I want to put a part of my wallet into Bitcoins versus like pounds, dollars, euros, whatever. And so we're talking to some of the ATMs about integrating these kind of second generation protocols when these coins come out, so that someone can basically go into an ATM, a Bitcoin ATM, and instead of necessarily buying Bitcoins, they would buy like pound coins or euro coins that are using Bitcoin, but so it gets them the benefits of moving some of the money around. There still obviously might be some costs to it, especially because of the KYC thing, but it gets them like comfortable with using that system, right? And sometimes you have to take people through like little steps of getting them like, okay, try this, and at least now you're using the Bitcoin ATM, and then, hey, you know what, once you get comfortable with it, that your money's not going to disappear into some peer-to-peer, random world that you can't identify, that now you're comfortable with it, okay, maybe I will use Bitcoin now because it will be slightly cheaper than using than fiat, or they just want to support the system, or there's special, in some cases, some retailers will be providing like special offers for using Bitcoin, right? So I think that that's going to be a big thing for adoption, from going like to 0.05 of the population to like at least like a couple % of the population to get them to start using this technology. So the next use case that we're seeing is what we call distributed applications, and that was defined by David Johnston, who's on our board, and he's part of BitAngels, which is they're investing in a lot of these kind of distributed apps. And what those are is, well, Bitcoin's kind of like the first distributed app. I guess you can kind of say that like some of the file sharing peer-to-peer networks may have been the first ones, but Bitcoin's kind of like the first monetary one. And so the last one that we just helped bring forth is called SafeCoin, which is a token for the MaidSafe network, and it's a Scottish company that's been working, I think, for about like 7 or 8 years on this kind of like encrypted peer-to-peer internet, where you basically can store your data securely, you can build apps on top of it, and it kind of, for them, it's a philosophical thing of like freedom, privacy, and information, and not having to deal with like the fact that like, oh my gosh, your data just got stolen by like some government or corporation because it got hacked or whatnot. So they're building the system. It's launching, I believe, in beta this summer, and I think it should go into production in the fall. So that was a relatively successful crowd sale. They raised a lot of money. We had some issues with it, with the way the crowdfunding went, because it was the first time we were doing it, and we didn't. There were some things that we didn't anticipate that it would sell out in like 5 hours. So. But sometimes I think you need to have some, some more economic thought put into it, and that's why it's important to get people on the legal side involved, people on the business side involved, where you really kind of think through these processes, and I think it's going to take a few times to get these things right. So the next one is property use rights. So the next thing we're talking about is like using the tokens to represent some kind of property. And of course, like there's the use case of like, okay, you can use Bitcoins to like represent your ownership in a car, that sort of thing. And I think that's a little bit far ways out, but there are people that are, for example, making miners, right? And in some cases, they are selling the hardware, but in many cases, they have people that like they don't want to manage like running the hardware. I mean, sometimes I have friends who own like, I don't know, a bunch of these, and they basically like blow up the transformers on their block. And their power company says like, you know, this is the fifth time this year. If it happens again, we're completely shutting you off. So basically, like what's happening is these mining companies are offering cloud services where they're hosting the miners for the buyers. And the issue is like, you know, what if you don't want that miner anymore? Like, how do you sell it? Like, you're not going to the cloud hosting facility and like picking it up and then putting it on eBay. So what you can do is basically like tokenize the hashing power and then create a market on top of Bitcoin using these protocols so that you can buy and sell hashing power when you think, hey, Bitcoin is about to go up. I want to buy a bunch of hashing power because I think I'm going to benefit from that. Or, you know, maybe there's too much hashing power on there, so I want to sell my hashing power because I think that, you know, that there's too much competition out there. So it's kind of creating a real-time market for these kind of like mining power, basically, for Bitcoin or other coins. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm almost done. So the last one is securities, and so you know we kind of discussed this a little bit here, and the issue with that is it's a huge, huge opportunity because of the fact that you don't have counterparty risk with using Bitcoin, but there's also, you know, there's the legal obligation part of it. So there has to be a lot of time and research of people and stakeholders involved to get this kind of thing right, do it in the right way. Obviously, if you have a company with real assets and stakeholders, you don't want to just like release stuff on the blockchain and then your regulatory authority comes to you and says, hey, well, where's your list of stockholders? And you give him a bunch of BTC addresses and you don't know who those are. So that's not going to work. But I think we can work through those systems. And so the last parts here, these are some of the folks that we're working with to set up hackathons, and the hackathons are to bring in investors to help us evaluate coin issuances, like BitAngels, eToro, Seedcoin, Havelock, cryptocurrency partners, and then that results in, you can see one of them, it's called Storage, that's going to come out sometime, I think at the end of this month. API network, which is like a token for accessing APIs, a block, which is like sort of an identity verification token, and then an Open Garden, which is like a peer-to-peer mesh network that is being compensated by tokens as well. Those are sort of the results from those hackathons. And thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, so it looks like there's a lot of you had some questions. So let's take our seats. So the first thing I want to ask is the IPO. How did that go? How did you raise your money?
For Mastercoin. So the way that worked out is that back in, I believe, well, March or April of last year, JR, who's J.R. Willett wrote a white paper back in 2012 outlining some of the issues with Bitcoin, which were like kind of security of funds, being able to send funds back, and kind of issue other kind of coins that would provide stability for the Bitcoin network and make it more attractive to normal, the average everyday user adoption. And so when he presented that back, I guess now 2.5 years ago, and then last year at the Bitcoin convention in San Jose, a lot of people came up to it and said, hey, we would like to see you work on this idea. What would it take? And then there was essentially a crowd sale of Mastercoins done in August of last year, which raised, I think, 4,730 Bitcoins.
That's a lot of Bitcoins. How many dollars?
Well, at that time, it was only worth 600,000, I think. Yeah, and obviously it's gone up a lot since then. So.
And who controls those Bitcoins now?
So what happened was that was given to a foundation called Mastercoin Foundation, and there's a board that basically approves some of the high-level changes in the spec and what gets implemented, what doesn't get implemented. The idea eventually is that the organization doesn't have to exist, and that there will be some kind of proof of stake voting. But to be honest with you, our goal is to not have the organization exist in 1 year. So we're coming up into a year, I think, in September, October. I'm not sure if that's going to happen by then, but we're trying to slowly kind of set up some of these things where it doesn't necessarily have to be run. I mean, ideally what happens with these open source communities is you have adoption by businesses, and then those businesses will fund developers who are maintaining the protocol and the software that's running the protocol. So ideally, that's what stage we want to get to. But I think we're still pretty early on. We've got MadeSafe, we've got these folks coming on. I think it probably would be at least another year before that could be a reality.
And the reason I ask is because accountability is such an important issue. So what are these funds being spent on? Is there any way people can check to see a ledger?
Yeah, so there's a Google Excel sheet ledger. It's not a real sophisticated accounting system. So all the information is on there. We sort of changed the model where in the beginning there was bounties put out. So there was like a $25,000 bounty for building a block explorer. Then that was followed by a 300 BTC bounty for distributed exchange. And unfortunately, at the time, we thought it was a good idea to do it this way because you get a bunch of different developers. But as it turns out, that caused issues where we had like 3 or 4 different development cycles, and we're trying to sync up, like, okay, this group of developers built something, and it doesn't agree with this group of developers, and then that doesn't agree with the third group. And the thing is, like, if you look at Bitcoin and how they've developed, there is only one reference Bitcoin client, which is Bitcoin-D. So everything else has to, match with Bitcoin-D, or it's not in compliance with the spec. And so we kind of went about it in a different way, and I think we've sort of changed direction in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months after we realized, like, okay, this is not going to work to have like 4 different groups working simultaneously, basically on the same thing.
Right. Now, Nikki, with your background in software engineering, and they were doing community stuff, how did you raise your money initially when you launched?
Our kind of issuance model was kind of interesting.
Can't hear you.
The issuance model for Counterparty was kind of unusual. Our founders decided very early on that having really unusual issuance model for Counterparty. Our founders decided very early on that having huge pools of money was, first of all, not particularly necessary to build a successful project, and secondly, gets away legitimacy in the future, because you end up with an organisation, a foundation that has piles of money and lots of influence over the protocol. So there was a news piece written about us called "The People Who Burn Bitcoin." The way that our distribution took place was essentially by a process called proof of burn. What that involves is sending bitcoins to a completely unspendable address. So those bitcoins become unusable. And in return, the system sends back a certain amount of the currency of our network, our native currency, which is called an XCP. And all of the XCP has been distributed. It all took place during what we call the burn period, which happened right at the very start of the project in January. And now the XCP is in the hands of its holders and can be bought on some centralized exchanges like Bit and also Poloniex, and also on our internal distributed exchange.
So one of the principal differences that it sounds like is that you kept the bitcoins that you raised at the Exodus address, but yours was a proof of burn, which meant all those bitcoins were destroyed.
Would we like to say sort of gifted to the wider Bitcoin?
How many bitcoins got burned and how many XCP were generated as a result?
Around about 2,000 bitcoins on average was generated 2.6 million XCP. XCP is slightly deflationary. It has two uses in the network. The first is to create assets, as you saw me do on the screen earlier. It costs about £1 sterling to create an asset right now, and it's always going to be extremely cheap. The other use is settling bets, and they are the only two uses for which you need XCP in the network. For everything else, you can just use Bitcoin. You can trade the assets, Bitcoin transaction fees don't matter.
One of the reasons this is so important is because it gives everyone access to financial services. And I'd like to put a scenario to you both. I tend to drive quite a lot, and I've seen my petrol price go up quite a bit. If I wanted to take a position in oils futures, could I hedge my position, or could my car even be intelligent about it eventually and start trading oils contracts in order to hedge against the rising cost of fuel? Is that efficient?
I'm not sure whether you can intelligently trade those contracts, but there's no question that those contracts can be made available to Counterparty. And the way that would work would be through people broadcasting their price information about the price of oil onto the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you would take a position on that and find the Counterparty to partner with you on the trade.
That's great. And you guys have got the same as well. Yours is a more broad-based foundation, so actually people can do lots of different apps, not just exchanges on Mastercoin. Is that right?
As far as the distributed exchange or the?
Yeah, so you've got a distributed exchange already, as I understand it. You've also got other apps on top of Mastercoin. It's not just for exchange.
Yeah. So the idea is that it's kind of a longer development curve on this part, but the idea is that eventually you can kind of combine some of these coins. Like if you have like something like the block off coin, which is doing identity verification, that if you are, let's say, a stock issuer and you're in a jurisdiction where you need to restrict the stock ownership to people from the UK. So you would potentially, what you would do is you would take the data from the block off coin, which, let's say it has notaries in the UK saying, okay, yeah, he's from the UK, he's from the US, he's from Canada, and whatnot, and then you could basically like restrict the trading of those coins to the pool of people that you're allowed to have trade that particular coin. So I think that is probably like the next sort of generation of like Bitcoin 2.0 is like combining these different coins so that there's like some more advanced logic to them.
Yeah. And how does it work? If I wanted to, for example, to take positions in gold, I would effectively have to put up something called margin, right? So I wouldn't actually be taking possession or inventory of physical gold. I would just be putting the Bitcoin equivalent or your own native coin equivalent.
Yeah, you make your wager in XCP, and the whole process works without margin. So you put up the amount of your wager on the other side would too, and then you each would have so much leverage. So there would come a point where either party can run out of money to support the wager, but both parties know what they're getting into in advance.
But doesn't a lot of this rely on you guys having liquidity on your own currency?
Yes.
Right, and I think that's why it's important to think about like these other, like for those kind of instances, the native coins have to get to a point where there's enough sort of volume, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have these fiat coins, then you can basically do that, right? And so the key though is that within the protocol, building some kind of a need for the native coin, and so it's kind of used as the conduit for some of the trading, basically. But our idea, well, what we believe, and if the market will prove this or disprove this, is that as there are more issuances happening and there's more trading happening of these various kind of distributed application coins and fiat coins, and whatever else people come up with, that will naturally create utility for the underlying coin. That's the theory.
And I hear there were some teething problems with Mastercoin. Is that right?
Yeah. So I have an economics background. I personally, thought, okay, guys, we kind of think this through. But it was one of those things where there was a timeline when it needed to happen, and the issue was that our protocol at that time had not been, we were only able to do a fundraiser with one kind of coin. And in this case, they wanted two kinds of coins, and so it was, it was basically done in a hacky way, and it kind of blew up a little bit. But at the end of the day, they still got, they got a ton of Bitcoins to support their network. They have a ton of Mastercoins. I put together also a partnership with a company called Bounty Source, and basically they can now go out there and you can attach a Mastercoin or Bitcoin price to a GitHub issue, and then if someone submits something that you like that fixes that issue, you can pay them in Bitcoins or Mastercoins. So now there is at least one, I think, a pretty decent merchant accepting Mastercoins and Bitcoins for this kind of because the money for this is being it's being created so that Bitcoins or Mastercoins or whatever can come in, so these folks can use it to build up the software and pay developers and whatnot. And there has to be some kind of this is the problem we have with the bounties, is we didn't know how to manage all these people. So there has to be partnerships where there's some intelligence and how do you manage, maybe managing 5 developers is easy, but if you have 20, 30, it starts getting, you have to have some kind of platform for that.
So what we're looking at here is an IPO culture, where it's easier to be discovered than ever before. And actually, you're going to be running out of excuses not to leave your jobs, because people can just set up their own startup for how much? Less than £1,000 of the kind of startup cost, less than.
Well, I think it depends on the concept and how it's being done, because the thing is with distributed applications, in the case of MaidSafe, they had worked on it for a long time. And even these guys doing Storage, which is a distributed storage network, I think Sean and those folks have been working on it for 5 or 6 months. So they've put quite a bit of work into this. They want to have, a lot of them want to have some kind of proof of concept that people can actually download and try. And, so it doesn't, you don't want to get into this kind of vaporware thing. So I think there has to be some kind of blood and sweat that get put into it, at least I hope.
But the point is that now it's the markets.
Yes. Yeah, the access to the markets is much easier now, especially for a global audience. And you think about I worked in Silicon Valley for 10 years. It's you had to be very special and have a lot of money to get access to Google and Facebook. And now it should be much easier for the average person to discover that and invest.
That's great. Well, it did look like we had a lot of questions, so why don't we start?
How is what you're doing different to Ethereum and from each other as well? I'm not sure I still quite get it, because you seem to be driving at the same things in a slightly different way.
So the question for the audience was, how is Mastercoin and Counterparty different to Ethereum?
Shall I go first? Yeah. I kind of think of Ethereum as the most general, possible blockchain-based application, in which it promises to be, true and complete. So I think potentially people could build things on Ethereum that mimic the functionality of both of our projects. We are super focused on Counterparty, so we really are just going after a very, very small number of extremely popular use cases. Whereas I think what Ethereum will do for you is they'll provide that extremely long tail of all these extremely small contract use cases, custom use cases. So if you want to use Ethereum, you're going to have to program. You have to write your own contracts and specify them in a programming language. With Counterparty, you can just use these contracts out of the box, extremely simple.
And also, I would say that Ethereum is extremely experimental. I have no idea whether or not their economic model is going to work, whether there will be enough demand for Ether. Do you have anything to add?
I think it's a great idea, and they've done a really great job of getting a lot of people involved. So I think that they will be successful. I think there's a lot of room. Well, if you go back to there's a book by Hayek talking about private currencies, and he talks about that there would be many private currencies competing for people's interest. And so we can't say that, okay, Mastercoin or Bitcoin or Counterparty or like whatever is going to dominate the whole world, because clearly, I mean, if you look at DOG, like they announced that they're going to be inflationary now. So, but, well, there might be some people that want that, right? I don't know who, but like there might be some people that like that. So,
it's issuance.
right, and but that appeals to a certain like group of people, right? If you are, I don't know, losing your money all the time, maybe you want inflationary money. I don't know. So I think with the Ethereum stuff, it's a different take on a similar problem, and maybe providing a broader base or kind of like operating system level rather than like application level. Maybe compare that way, like a.
Actually, Charles Hoskinson compares it to the Android of crypto.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a foundation which people can.
Right.
Yes, please.
Hi, Anthony Lewis. So you mentioned fiat coins. So let's take the example of sterling coin. How much should I pay for one? How much should I expect to receive for one? Can I issue a billion sterling coin and expect people to give me £1 billion in return for sterling coin? So talk me through how a fiat coin would work and how it'd be backed.
So the question is, how would a fiat coin work? How much would they cost? I'm guessing it's the same as what now cost.
Yes. Well, the thing is that these groups are still working on this, so I don't want to reveal their IP, but they have different approaches, which is really weird because I thought that it would all be the same approach. But they're in different geographic regions, and apparently, there's different laws and regulations and this kind of thing. And so they have different approaches, but generally speaking, it appears that it is actually backed by real money sitting in some bank account. And
so that's Ripple, which issues IOU on.
Yeah, essentially, but for Bitcoin, it's Ripple for Bitcoin.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Yes, back.
In your example with Mt. Gox, you said you couldn't pull money out of Mt. Gox, you'd use a fiat coin. Surely you just ran out of fiat coin that had been pulled out, and you end up with the same issue. And fiat coin would not be worth the exact amount.
Well,
You peg it to the right value.
that's not necessarily true, because like with Mt. Gox, there were people who actually were able to get money out of there, but there was. But
The general.
no, I don't know about him, but I personally know people who were able to arbitrage large amounts.
But I think what has to work on Mastercoin is someone has to be issuing a fee to the Mastercoin press group, and then they have to be publishing a fee on the price of that currency in order to work.
No. These are actually, the tokens are backed by actual tokens. So, I mean, it is a little centralized. It's not like perfect, right? But the point is that what you want is that you want to have a bunch of these out there. And so people have a choice. And then maybe what happens is you can look at which one do you feel comfortable doing business with, which ones are the ones that are accepted by your exchanges that you work with as a trader. And I think it's more like, I think for the adoption for the average user, it will help because, for me to explain to like my mom, for example, I tried a few times, but like, for her, like the compelling reason to use Bitcoin right now is like, let's say getting rid of the credit card fees. Because she didn't have to use credit cards for her business 15 years ago, and now she's got to pay a few percentage points. And then I believe in the EU, there's the directive for lowering the credit card rates in a couple of years. So that will drive margins in that business down, which means that they will probably be forced into using Bitcoin.
Yeah, maybe. Is it right? Does somebody have to publish the price to Counterparty in order for somebody to be able to trade on something like sterling?
Well, let's say, for example, we had sterling coin inside Counterparty. It would have to be tied to an issuer, so it would be Nikki sterling coin or Chris sterling coin. So that people would obviously be able to distinguish it between the backing it. So it would have to be reserve backed, and those reserves would presumably have to be audited, as those results being made public. And as the gentleman said, if this did happen, I think it probably will happen. I see it kind of behaving in the same way as a Ripple gateway does. And one sterling coin should cost £1 minus fees. If it doesn't, that's a big indicator that there's something wrong. You can also potentially do quite interesting things with regard to insurance through Counterparty as well. Some people have kind of mooted the idea of having some kind of like pricing information that says something about how reliable an issuer is. So potentially you can take a position on whether or not an issuer might fail in the future. So this is a way to hedge the fact that the issuers whose coins you hold might one day go bankrupt.
Blockchain is a scarce resource. So let's say both Counterparty and Mastercoin work in 3 years' time, and you both have to compete over limit size of block, say 1 megabyte. You both work towards decentralization, so the only way to really increase that block size is by more centralization. So what do you think about politics of mining?
Yeah, so you guys had an interesting run-in with the Bitcoin core debt. So there was a feature that was advertised called the off return in the latest release of Bitcoin. What it means is that you're allowed to put in metadata, which your services rely on. And it was slashed from the 80 bytes down to 40 bytes in the latest release. Can you talk a little bit about how sustainable it's going to be in the long run if we're continuing to put lots and lots of data into the blockchain? Because everyone has to download it in order for it to remain decentralized, right?
Okay, yeah, so it is a scarce resource. It's a scarce resource like my floppy drive was a scarce resource in 1990. I can't assume, at that time I cannot assume that that was always going to be the state of the system. Now, of course, with peer-to-peer systems, it is difficult because the scaling just is very, very tough. But I think the devs are aware, they are aware of this issue, and whether or not it's Counterparty, Mastercoin, whatever kind of transactions, the fact is that today, with the number of the transaction throughput, whether like our projects exist or not, just payments, there's just, it has to grow. So they have to figure out ways to make the transaction throughput like, I don't know, 100x minimum to really compete with like Visa network, MasterCard network, bank transfers, all that. So I don't know, we handle our problem. They they got their task.
I think to be fair to the Bitcoin core, Jack Garza raised this issue that there wasn't enough communication running up to the launches, essentially, and the op return was put in as a way of leaving the window unlocked so that you guys didn't break it. And I think what they're saying is that now you've gone and broken it. People that used Bitcoin before never envisaged it being used as a distributed database. They just imagined it as a currency. So is there not some scope for you using another blockchain like Litecoin, for example?
Absolutely, there's scope. At Counterparty, we consider ourselves to be sort of technology agnostic, I'd say. If a better, more suitable alternative comes along, there's no reason why we wouldn't seriously consider moving Counterparty over to a different blockchain. We do really love the Bitcoin devs to introduce this 80 byte limit because it will mean that our transactions will become provable, which means it's more likely for. I suppose the main contention was the problem with thread nodes and how many of them there are, how few there are, and how they're needed to essentially get that database quickly around the network. So in the presence of this 80 byte limit, we'll be able to ultimately have our data included, so people who are running through those wouldn't necessarily have to worry about hosting that data.
So just so you know, when you say provable, you mean that the full nodes in the future will have a choice as to whether or not to store that data.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, lastly, how can we get in touch with you guys? Like, how can people get started with Mastercoin?
With Mastercoin, well, if you're a developer, go on GitHub /Mastercoin or MSC protocol on Twitter, and or you can dev@mastercoin.org. Just email us, and we'll have someone talk to you whatever you're interested in. There's think right now we're doing like 100,000 US dollars in bounties every month. Some of that is given to the people who are working on it full time, and then for also people that are contributing something cool or building a faucet or helping with SEO or finding bugs, things of that sort. So you can get involved as much as you want, or just help out part time, or whatever.
What exchanges does NXT trade on?
So right now, masterexchange.com, and then the distributed exchange, which you could use test.omniwallet.org for, and then we're building a daemon which is integrated with Bitcoin Core. That will be out in the next few weeks. So hopefully that will make it a lot easier for exchanges to integrate our software.
Yeah, great. And Nikki, where can we get Counterparty from XCP?
So Counterparty is an open source community-driven project. We want to help out. Join us in the forums. If you want to get your hands on some XCP, you can get some from Poloniex. Also, I pronounce this right, BTR, the Chinese exchange. And you can also put some Bitcoin into account wallet that you store. You can buy XCP through the exchange like that as well.
Awesome.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for presenting. Give a round of applause, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, just because to Counterparty's demo earlier, we had a demo from Benny Wood, who's building or involved in the building of a small platform which is being developed on top of Mastercoin or both platforms. So over to Ben.
Hi guys, as you said, I'm Ben, and I'm here from Swarm. We're one of the first companies, I guess, that's going to actually go to market with a platform built on top of both Counterparty and Mastercoin. We're actually building a Bitcoin-driven incubator. So what I'm showing you here is actually stuff from our pre-launch. We're doing our coin-funded IPO, much the same way as Mastercoin, I suppose, in about 2 weeks. We've been actually going through a process of getting the early investment, or a sort of invitation-only investment, just prior to the public launch. So I'm showing you some of the bits that actually went around by invitation only here. And as we said, we're real crowdfunding. We're looking at basically launching a platform that's a little bit like Kickstarter, but actually for business rather than art projects and things like that. So we're allowing people to buy equity in companies, issue equity coins in companies, and basically distribute that equity globally, locally, etc., using some of these tools, Counter Wallet, for example. We're going to be the first distributed incubator. So rather than a small incubator or Y Combinator, accelerator, etc., we're offering the opportunity for people to incubate their business across the Bitcoin network. The idea that it's a very fast way to get to market. So we're hopefully removing a lot of the barriers from small companies that really need access to funding, that would have traditionally struggled to get through the banking infrastructure and process, etc., for listing their equity on the open market. We're subject to exactly the same issues that were mentioned earlier by Bank for the Future. It's a pretty interesting space to operate right now. We're trying really hard, well, I'm trying really hard not to end up in jail. Actually, we have a guy that a lot of you will probably come across, Joel Dietz, who's the co-founder of Swarm. He's being a lot more public than me, so I'm hoping he's the one that will go to jail. One of the neat things I think that we're doing that's a little bit different to some of the platforms, etc., that have been built is we're making this a really consumer-friendly product. So the hope is that people who are even not Bitcoin savvy, etc., will be able to participate in using our currency and our altcoins that we're all building on Counter Wallet or Counterparty and Mastercoin, etc. So the little sneak preview of what's going to be coming out on everyone's favorite smart devices. As I said, right now we're just in the last stages of our fundraiser. 2 weeks' time we do the public launch. Right now, pre-investment, but pretty mad time. Actually, if anyone wants to get in, very early stage before we go public, I think I have a few of our pre-launch coins. One of I guess the question get to you guys afterwards. The really cool thing that we're doing is when you invest in Swarm, a little bit like some of the other, I guess, more altruistic ventures out there, you'll actually be investing in all of the future projects that are launched on Swarm. So as every launch occurs, we'll be issuing coin proportionate to the Swarm coin that are purchased at the moment. So actually it's like one ring to rule the world. If you get a Swarm coin, you will end up investing in, I hope, millions of future ventures effectively. As I said, right now, early phase, this is all about our fundraiser, etc. But we're doing a pretty neat sort of reverse launch here that to encourage people to get in early. The conversion rate for Bitcoin to Swarm coins is better the sooner you get in now. So in our pre-sale or expression of interest, you will receive more Swarm coins for your Bitcoin. When we go public in 2 weeks, the first round will be, again, preferential rate at the beginning, trailing out as time goes on. And third round, which is effectively to fund the true incubator aspect of our business, will tail out to 21,000 Bitcoins. I'll not go through all the scenarios. I'll just say that basically what we are is a company or a business that is building on the awesome work that Counterparty has done, Mastercoin have done. So we're helping companies that don't want to get into programming and building a platform, etc., take advantage of the issuance of these coins, giving you a platform to do that, helping with all the compliance issues, etc. that go with that. That's basically it. Certainly I'm available for questions anyway.
Does anyone have some questions today? Maybe over here and then before they are. Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for that interesting discussion. Thanks Chris for the moderating. We'll bring people forward a bit on to some startup announcements and shout-outs. There's a project which is running from this group, which some of you may be aware of, maybe not all of you, but we've slowly but surely been putting together the UK Digital Currency Association, and we finally managed to open up membership today. We had a group of 50 or so founder members who helped fund us early on. We've tried not to spend very much of it at all. So we've got some money in the box as we move forward. We've got some plans. Adam Cleary, who's one of the interim board members, is just going to kind of update us on where we're at. And a few of the other members or lead members of the working groups that we have, they're just going to kind of update you on where we stand and open up any questions if you have.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Hopefully this works, maybe this will work better. So as Paul says, I'm here on behalf of the interim board of the UK Digital Currency Association. So the Digital Currency Association, UK Digital Currency Association is our trade association for digital currencies in the UK, which we have formed. And before I sort of talk too much about it, I want to say a special thank you to Paul for his work on the UK DCA. Paul is the linchpin of the UK DCA and so many things about digital currencies in London, in the UK. Big round of applause for Paul. So, as Paul said, the UK DCA, we got started thanks to his hard work and the contribution of other people, and we're up and running. UKDCA.org, right? We have our first paying members, unsolicited. So now you have to sign up and pay your membership. If you don't have any money, you can just be a supporter. Just sign up and be a supporter. No problem, right? But if you can afford £10 or £15, bagatelle in Bitcoin, of course, yes. For legal reasons it's in pounds, but you have to pay Bitcoin. If you can afford that, please join the UKDCA and support the work that Paul is doing, that we are contributing to, that the guys are doing here, and support the community and be part of the UKDCA. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some of the work the UKDCA is doing. We've got several working groups going. We've got a representative from each of those working groups right here today, and we're going to start with the communications work group. Paul Ferris is going to tell us what the communications working group does.
Communications failing all right. Welcome. We have a committee. We're a communications committee, and the very first thing that we've decided is that the number one priority is to tell everybody that they can be a member. So we're going to run a membership drive and make sure that you guys know that you can become a member and that companies can join and sort of spread the word. Look, I'm a bit embarrassed really being up here because I'm only actually the lead of a committee of people, and we're putting the processes in for what's an association needs to communicate. That is really has to be from the membership. The more members there are, the more members that actually join in and become involved, the better we communicate. We're here to represent the whole of the community. That means individuals, companies, and everything in between. So how do you actually tackle that? And that's actually what we're doing right now. So the new association, how we go about doing this is what this committee is putting together. So we're putting the plan together, the process together, to make sure we can represent everybody in this room and everybody in the community.
Thank you, Paul. Wonderful, short and sweet. So, as he says, all of you are welcome to join and be part of the community. This isn't all sewn up. You can be in the committee. There are many areas of interest. There's also a technology committee. Please join, contribute, be part of it. You're very welcome. We are the interim board. We don't consider ourselves elected for life or anything like that, or even for more than a few more weeks. We are going to have elections soon, and you will all be able to vote if you sign up, of course, and are members, which is a precondition, I'm afraid. But once we have elections, you can be leading the DCA, and we would very much welcome that. But we've been able to get the ball rolling thanks to Paul and the contributions of everyone in the committees. So now I'm going to ask a man who's an institution in his own right, Mr. Eric Benz, to tell us about Mr. Eric Benz, about business and financing.
Right, yeah. I don't know if this is working or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it works.
You can hear me back here?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, so with business and finance, obviously we've been doing a hell of a lot of work with the different kind of regulators, I guess you could say, with Isle of Man and various other kind of areas. And basically, we can expect a very, very important announcement to come on Monday, which will be very, very good news for the entire ecosystem. We've spent a lot of time, probably about a year or so, working with the regulators in Isle of Man, and on Monday they're going to be coming out with a special announcement, basically giving legitimacy to crypto businesses to operate, get set up, and start working with banks in the Isle of Man to basically start scaling So Isle of Man will be the first area, the first country, so to speak, to actually issue specific licenses for Bitcoin businesses. These licenses are basically for the banks in order to start onboarding these companies from a procedural standpoint, so KYC, AML protocols, but these licenses are basically for banks to do special projects with these companies. So if the companies actually don't fall under a specific FCA or FSC guideline, they're given this type of license for the banks to work on with them as a project. And then in early 2015, it'll be the first area that's actually going to issue specific types of crypto guidelines and licenses and different kind of things for businesses to operate there. So it's very, very exciting. So you'll see a lot of different things coming out on Monday, which will really open the window for a lot of different banks, not only there to operate, but it will be a domino effect to where you'll start seeing a lot of the UK banks and regulators starting to come around, which they are. So expect a lot of very positive announcements and adoption to come through in the next couple months. I think that this summer is going to be very, very big for crypto, and especially come September when we have some of the big conferences coming here. we're really going to show a lot of the ecosystem, what London's about. And I think it's really, really exciting to kind of what we're putting together and working with a lot of these different companies to provide them the options to scale their business is very important. So, you know, if you are part of the UK DCA or if you're not, it really doesn't matter. We're here to provide a framework and an option for you guys to be able to scale your business no matter what, without fear of getting shut down, without fear of the accounts being closed. You know, we're here to obviously facilitate what you guys need. So that's first, most important, obviously.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric, and I'm so pleased that your efforts have borne fruit in the other man. Well done. And now I'm going to ask Sean, I'm sorry, I do apologize, from Coinscrum, to tell us about exchanges and regulation and the EU and other such things. Please.
About the EU in 3 minutes.
Yes.
Large and centralized.
Is this somebody's iPhone? Sorry, that left it here. Oh, okay, sorry.
So I'm one of the co-leads with Adam Zeri, who's sitting back that way, of a group called the Exchanges Regulation and Accounting Working Group. I think I was asked to help lead it because I'm the only two people who can actually say all of that.
We're the only two people who read any of the regulations.
That's right.
And you tell us what to do.
And we can tell you. So our working group, probably the first off the ground, we started very quickly to put together a draft position paper on regulation in the UK. And that draft is nearing completion, and with the official launch today of UK DCA, we hope to have that published on the website within the next week or two, and invite comment on that draft. Very important in putting our position forward to regulators as to whether we don't or do, or what kind of regulation we want. And the working group's been working very hard. We're working extremely hard to come up with some sensible approach and pragmatic approach. And so please watch the space, watch the website, and have a look at the draft once it's up there. Please comment on it, because before it's made to the association policy, the members, hopefully all of you are going to sign up, and members have already done them, and then you can have a say. We've been very busy also on the European front, largely because there are a couple of important initiatives going on in the European space, and we don't want them to overtake us whilst we're sort of getting launched and then talking about it, and then find it's too late for things to happen in Europe. One, there is a new Payment Services Directive, which is going to start its legislative process in the coming months, this summer. It's been in draft form, gone through various provisions that do not at this stage include anything about crypto, but that doesn't mean that something won't slip in when it goes to the European Parliament. So we're very anxious to do some work with other digital currency associations in the European Union and the EEA more broadly to try and make sure that we have a coordinated approach. And with that in mind, our group got together a forum of European digital currency associations that had its meeting a couple of weeks ago in Amsterdam just before the Bitcoin 2014 conference. And there was surprising unanimity in terms of the kind of approach. And we hope, therefore, to influence in the way that we all want, that the association will want, influence any legislation. And finally, we've also been in discussions with the European Banking Authority. This is actually a very powerful regulator. A super regulator that was created after the 2008, after the start of the financial crisis, and they can actually determine unilaterally what happens to cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, in terms of any licensed institutions. So banks and payment institutions could suddenly find that they're not allowed, as happened recently in China, and to a different extent in Russia and onto other jurisdictions. In fact, Holland has just come up with severe warnings for banks, and they could do this Europe-wide, and we suddenly find that our business model has changed, so we're doing some lobbying there, and we've had discussions with the head of the European Banking Authority, who've got a task force that will be publishing their position on digital currencies sometime in the next month or two. I'm very busy. I'd very much like to give up my role as co-lead, so please join and let's have some volunteers for the
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So, as she said, we all like to give up our roles and have you do them. So please join so you can take over the workload. No, seriously, but please do support us, please do join, go on the website, join up, support us, follow us, help us.
Pay us.
Pay us. Thank you, Mr. Pence. Yes, absolutely.
The technical committee.
Oh, the technical committee. Excellent. We've got a sudden entry.
Take my seat.
There is one more subcommittee, which is technical, and we currently only have 2 members, so we'd love for more of you to join. And the other one isn't here. So the goal of the technical committee is basically just to be a point of contact for businesses, essentially sort of established businesses who are thinking about getting involved with Bitcoin. So if they have questions about how it works, particularly on the technical side, obviously, they can come to us. And we're not claiming to be experts about it, but we know who the experts are, and so we can put people in contact. So if you are in any way technical and would like to help us, come and join the committee. If you're looking for some technical advice, come to us and we'll tell you the spot. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. So a full compliment to all our subcommittees, I think. Does anyone have any questions about the UK DCA at all? To anyone? Any of the panelists? Any questions?
How cheap is it to join?
How cheap is it to join? How cheap is it to join?
How expensive?
It's free. It's free. For supporters, it's free. For individual members, it's
there's a free tier for supporters members, which gives you access to the forum, and you can join debates and discussions, polls, and then individual annual membership is £20, equivalent to Bitcoins, and that gets you a voting right. And then there's 2 tiers of industry membership for startups, £200 a year, and then for more established businesses, it's £1,000 a year.
It'll be the most expensive membership anybody ever takes.
Indeed.
Are there any plans to become an affiliate chapter of the Bitcoin Foundation, or are you considering it?
A next question. We're not sure. We're waiting a little bit for the Bitcoin Foundation to establish themselves in London and to decide what they want to do. There's a lot of stuff going on with different chapters, but we sort of don't know what agreements have been reached. They seem to have different agreements in different countries. So we need to sort of establish what our position is in line with some of the other associations in the EU, perhaps, and see whether it is or makes sense. But I mean, the idea is not to duplicate things. We may do it, I think, but it's not something that I'm going to decide. It's our relationship with
I mean, the Bitcoin Foundation, that was on the table a year ago, and I think people that were involved in that discussion thought it was a bit restrictive, as did most people in other countries, it seems. So that's why we kick-started this, but we met with them in Amsterdam, and we said, we're doing this, we're open to, we're not in competition with anyone, we want to achieve the same goals again. So it's what's best for everyone. If something comes along and it proves to be beneficial to actually join forces with them, then absolutely be open to it. But that's for everyone else to decide, really. We just wanted this platform that people could come together and reach consensus on what people want to do and what's best for people in the UK.
We do want to represent digital currency rather than just Bitcoin.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we made that decision that we wanted to be flexible enough to encompass new technologies as they came along and not just be tied to Bitcoin per se.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Startup shout out now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hearing ends. So we were supposed to have two, we've just got one. If anyone else has startup they want to come and do a 30-second shout out, you're welcome. Just drop down to the side. And we're going to film the presentation. I will hand over to Bradley Roberts from Pocket Box. Hello. Pleased to be here. Keeping on from that statement about supporting more than Bitcoin, I'd like to introduce you to Pocket. We are the easiest way to spend your cryptocurrencies on gift cards in Europe. Thank you. Okay, so Pocket.io is our URL. We launched the company in February this year. We saw a short-term problem in the digital economy, and that was that, firstly, there isn't a lot of choice when looking to spend Bitcoin on anything. Secondly, retailers aren't jumping at the chance to accept it, they're not embracing it. And thirdly, consequently, people are questioning the usefulness of cryptocurrencies. The naysayers that we have to put away by creating a portal for people to spend their Bitcoin on everyday things, much like they would do fiat currencies. The knock-on effect of this, the happy consequence, is that we're going to increase the liquidity, stability, and visibility of these cryptocurrencies as well. So, Pocket provides a way for people to buy gift cards using cryptocurrencies at major retailers. We've now got 27 cards across a number of different categories. We've got food and drink, we do Asda, M&S, Pizza Express, Starbucks, the Great British Pub Card, which is basically a gift card for drinking in pubs. It's accepted at 750 pubs around the UK, many of which are in this area, so that's great. We accept a number of different cryptocurrencies, 12 currently, including Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, a lot really, Feathercoin, you name it. And thirdly, our site, it's a user interface that's really simple, intuitive. It automatically converts your gift card value to your choice of cryptocurrency. We've got a streamlined checkout process, and once we've got six confirmations on the network, we deliver your gift card. But we are improving that, so I'll come to in a minute. This is how the product looks. So what we have to do is come to Pocket.io, sign up, create an account. The customer journey is that you choose your merchant, either Amazon or Asda, choose your valid gift card, pay with your choice of cryptocurrency, and then we deliver the code or PDF to your email or user dashboard. So, plans for the future. We're actually expanding into the EU. We've had a lot of demand worldwide. We're in production and moving to the EU in the next couple of months. We're also moving to the US and Canada. We're actually improving our processing to one confirmation on the network because we want instant delivery. So we want our customers to be sitting in a pub, empty pint, be able to top up your gift card within the time that it takes you to get to the bar. So that's why we're trying to move it to one confirmation on the network. And also in production, we have the Pocket app, which is a digital wallet of sorts. So we geolocation to find out what near you is accepting cryptocurrencies, and that'll be really easy for you to spend them locally. So that's it. If you have any questions, please come and ask us afterwards. Thank you very much.
Sorry, any other questions from Eric? Yes, sorry.
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to know, so in terms of the offerings of the gift cards, how many gift cards in total are you offering?
So we've currently got 27 cards across food and drink, fashion, we have Amazon for everything else, we have gaming, Xbox, PlayStation, Steam.
And is that all for UK or is that just in general?
Just the UK, sorry.
Is it just for UK or generally EU,
yeah,
worldwide?
Just for the UK at the moment. As I said, we're moving into the EU in the coming months. Planning to go globally with that request globally.
And is it a mobile app or is it a website or how does it?
It's a website. We're developing an app over the next couple of months. Yeah.
What's your markup?
Sorry?
What's your markup?
We use BitPay's BDB exchange rate, no markup.
And do we get 3% back as well on the price of the?
This is the reward system that we're going to be implementing, much like I suppose the next you're talking about. We're also taking requests from our user base for adding new coins and new gift cards constantly.
What do you do with the coins, all the coins that you accept? Are you putting them on exchange, or are you holding them long term?
We hold as much as we possibly can, but for cash flow we have to sell some obviously, but holding is what we intend to do.
Okay, cool.
Anyone else like to squeeze a question in? Sorry, someone fire away. Someone.
Yeah, given latest updates from Peter III, what do you think about waiting for more than one confirmation, or do you think one confirmation is enough?
We've had no problems with one confirmation, so we're willing to sacrifice the chance of it going wrong for our customers. Also, with Apple apparently not stifling the development of things, we're actually accepting money for iTunes vouchers. That's what's going on.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Anyone have any announcements about the future billion-dollar business? Not okay. Not okay.
Got more. I'm just really excited because, you know, in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be really crazy in terms of adoption and acceptance and finally bringing a sense of legitimacy into the ecosystem. Why not?
Buy Bitcoin. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone who's taken part tonight. Thank you for moderating over. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Future. Steve Coin, happy to make his time with Steve Coin. And we'll see you again very soon. Thanks.
Okay, it's all right. Hi there, everyone. Well, thanks very much for watching. We're going to tune out now, but later on, Mad Bitcoins has an interview with Tatiana Moroz, who's just launched Tatiana Coin, which I believe will be on Counterparty. So don't miss that. That'll be on a little bit later on. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.